Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my newest patron, Gerard L. Thank you for choosing to support the channel. What Elon said yesterday needs explaining. He said the Tesla AI4 computer that understands the vast complexities of driving in the real world is only around 1/4 the power of an H100. That is what leads me to this conclusion. That conclusion being most people in the AI community don't yet understand the intelligence density potential is vastly greater than what we're currently experiencing. Elon said, I think we're off by 2 orders of magnitude in terms of intelligence density per gigabyte. That's just algorithmic improvement, same computer. And listen, I know that many Hardware 3 owners out there are in despair, but when Elon makes comments like this, we have to weigh it for what it's worth. Those of you in that camp may be waiting longer than you would like, but the path for Tesla to actually offer something like a V14 Lite to Hardware 3 owners should absolutely be possible if what Elon is saying is true. Elon is saying that many people in the AI space are looking at superintelligence and are envisioning it 100 times off what Elon believes the reality will be. And he argued the proof was Tesla's AI4. And this does make sense because naturally all we really hear about primarily is hardware breakthrough. There's always reporting and chatter about AI5 and beyond. And silicon from all companies is physical, they have statistics, and people can run their comparisons. But on the software side, it very rarely gets talked about publicly. And as we've heard direct from Tesla, sometimes these neural nets can be rather opaque. But the short of what Elon is saying is here that it's not going to be new or better hardware or more energy or more capital, but the same machine will be 100 times smarter through software improvements alone. And then, of course, the hardware improvements will compound on top of that. Elon said the computers are getting better. That's why I think it's a 10x improvement per year type of thing, 1000%. And a simple fact check on what Elon said for what we can actually find out. The NVIDIA H100, the GPU that powers almost every major AI training run on the planet right now, draws up to around 700 watts, which yes, will depend on the actual configuration, but it's a reasonable benchmark. Tesla's AI4 inference chip will draw about 170 watts at its peak. So that claim of Tesla's power draw being 1/4 the NVIDIA H100 checks out. And on the software side, Tesla has told us that AI4 will run heterogeneous precision. In simple terms, what that means is AI4 can run 8-bit integer math for most of the layers, which is a lot simpler, but it can then jump up to more detailed numbers like 16 or 32-bit for more critical parts of the calculations. And I think part of what gets overlooked is that think back to when AI4 was launched at Tesla into production back in 2023. At the time, Tesla was running FSD version 11. So if you have some time, go back and watch some FSD version 11 videos. And you'll be able to see how much progress Tesla has made using the exact same AI4. So that is part of Elon's point. It's the exact same hardware, but over time, the software continues to improve exponentially, driving this enhanced intelligence density per gigabyte that most are overlooking. So it may take longer than you would want, but once Tesla solves unsupervised with AI4, there's still a strong chance Tesla can then deliver a much improved FSD model, 14 Lite or whatever they call it, to all Hardware 3 owners. Elon is clearly still very bullish on the advancements being made, and that will be made on the software side, and seemingly there is no end in sight. Then Elon said this morning, yeah, I'll be surprised if domestic chip production in China is not competitive with Taiwan in raw compute, albeit less power efficient within 3 to 5 years. There are also significant diminishing returns to reducing element size on a chip, and some things, like SRAM, just don't scale down. Just some background, Taiwan's TSMC still dominates most of the leading edge logic. We're talking about 2 and 3 nanometer nodes. And they do use those massive EUV lithography machines from ASML. On the other hand, right now, one of China's main players, SMIC, or Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corp., is currently operating under some US export controls, so they can't even use some of these advanced EUV tools. But despite that current limitation, Elon sees a path for China to catch up in the next few years, even if they end up with a bit less power efficiency. I'm sure most of you have heard of Moore's Law, which says the number of transistors on an integrated circuit doubles about every 2 years, while the cost of those transistors tends to decrease or stay roughly constant, which over time has led to exponential improvements in compute performance. But as Elon is now highlighting, from about 7 nanometers and down, that cost per transistor decline has slowed dramatically. And the SRAM Elon mentioned is just static random access memory, which is the fastest memory on the chip. And in Tesla's case with FSD, it's that part of the chip that is responsible for remembering what the road looks like in certain timeframes. And on most modern AI chips, it's actually the SRAM that can take up over 50% of the entire chip area. And we hinted at this in videos in the past when we talked about how under 10 or so nanometer nodes, the new naming conventions don't always refer to any physical part of the chip, meaning 7, 5, 3 nanometer and below often just refer to a more advanced design in general, not that any specific measurement of the chip perfectly correlates with the naming. So effectively what's been happening is the density of the rest of the chip outside of the SRAM has continued to shrink down and become more efficient, but according to Elon, we're at or close to the point where the SRAM does not have those same benefits of continual shrinkage. Meaning you can't just keep using smaller process nodes to magically get way more performance or efficiency. And because of this limitation, if you follow this industry, you will have likely seen some companies now stacking SRAM in 3D layers, meaning they're going up instead of sideways. Or you may have heard terms like gate all around or CFET, CFET, which are just advancements in the actual shape of these transistors. Or in some cases, because the SRAM just can't be shrunk any smaller, they're just accepting bigger chips in general. But what have we seen from Tesla time after time? Once a limiting factor is spotted, Tesla takes matters into its own hands and blows that bottleneck wide open itself. And in this case, because Tesla cannot just keep going back to TSMC or Samsung asking for smaller, better nodes, Tesla has started its own radical redesign of its silicon, and it's why Elon has said AI5 is existential for Tesla. So the Tesla Terafab won't just be for increased scale and supply chain resilience, it's for Tesla's custom hardware designs that allow it to build exactly what it needs without any compromise. So this SRAM physics wall that's being hit isn't going to stop progress for Tesla on the hardware side, it's just playing a role in forcing Tesla to stop depending on others and to build the future it needs itself. And don't forget what Elon said. He said, quote, "We would not use any other chip in our cars and robots, even if they were free," end quote. And Tesla having the ability and talent to pivot and do things like this is a big reason why I have so much confidence in the teams doing what needs to be done and solving for unsupervised and Optimus. Again, it may take longer than we want, but in my opinion, barring a black swan, they are going to do it, and no one is even close to being as well positioned as Tesla to make advancements on the hardware and the software side, and then to deploy that intelligence in physical products at scale. I mean, seriously, just take a second and ask yourself what other companies are positioned like Tesla. Just in case anybody was tied up over the weekend, the Cybertruck dual motor all-wheel drive, the most affordable variant, went up in price $10,000, now sits at $69,990. So that was double the price hike that I was expecting. Currently, the delivery page for that trim says available 2027. And both the Premium and Cyberbeast trims say available in 4 to 6 weeks. So I missed on the size of the price hike, but directionally what we covered was accurate, as Tesla has likely achieved its goal of assessing the elasticity of demand for the Cybertruck market, getting its answers much faster than it would have otherwise, clearing out the supply chain parts inventory upstream, and ramping up utilization of that production line at least for the next year or so. However, it's not all good because in the process, Tesla has certainly upset a significant number of customers. Part of that is because over the weekend, Tesla revised its eligibility language for the FSD transfer. They're now saying you must take delivery of your new Tesla vehicle by March 31st this year. Whereas the prior wording was you just have to place an order for a new Tesla by March 31st to qualify for the transfer. So now what Tesla is saying, they'll honor the FSD transfer if your original delivery window was on or before March 31st, or your delivery slips into April this year due to a delay caused by Tesla. But now Tesla is saying they will not honor FSD transfer if the original delivery estimate was beyond March 31st. But in that scenario, or one where you cannot take delivery by that date, then Tesla will offer a refund of the $250 order fee, which is typically non-refundable. So, of course, the problem with this is plenty of people placed an order for the cheaper Cybertruck expecting to be able to transfer FSD, but a bulk of those orders were for people whose order dates would be after March 31st. So just put yourself in those shoes for a second. Getting your $250 back is not going to be good enough when what you really want is a new, cheaper Cybertruck and to be able to transfer your FSD because Tesla told you you could when you placed the order. And we do have to point out, Tesla has always said the FSD transfer program is subject to change or to end at any time. But as I always like to say, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And to be clear, Tesla has said that if you have FSD on a car you're trading into Tesla, that they will include that value in the trade-in value. However, the reality has been that in the real world, Tesla consistently undervalues that FSD quite heavily. So at best, you would only get a portion of the value of FSD back. I have heard that selling via a third party can be a little bit better, but of course that brings with it a lot more complexity. But of course, none of that changes what Tesla did here, how it's impacting its customers. And to me, it just seems simple. Anybody that placed an order expecting to be able to transfer FSD, as long as they place the order before that deadline, should be able to transfer FSD. But here we are. Sadly, as we always say, no company is perfect, Tesla included, but I would like to see them do better than this. The plant manager of Giga Berlin, Andre Thierig, shared a long post on LinkedIn. He was effectively setting the word straight, correcting some FUD from Handelsblatt, saying that the outlet's only goal was to run an anti-Tesla campaign together with the IG Metall union. Handelsblatt was claiming Tesla only made 149,000 Model Ys in 2025. Andre said that was wrong. They produced over 200,000 vehicles again in 2025. And that was despite halting production in Q1 to switch to the new Model Y. However, here's the thing. Let's assume Tesla did 210,000 vehicles from Giga Berlin. If it was any more than that, I think this number would have been 210,000. Here's the problem. The current installed capacity at Giga Berlin for the Model Y is over 375,000 units per year. 210K divided by 375K is a 56% utilization rate. And replying to BYD's current sales collapse, Elon said, "That's tough sledding. Factories do great above 80% capacity, marginal at 60%, and mega pain below 50%. Which by Elon's own definition puts Giga Berlin somewhere between mega pain and marginal. And even if we adjust for the changeover to the new Model Y and assume Tesla could have done 250,000 units based on demand, that would still only work out to about a 67% capacity, which according to Elon would still be closer to marginal than great. And this is something we have to keep in mind for Cybertruck. So far, Tesla's been doing about 5,000 Cybertrucks per quarter, so we'll call it 20,000 units per year before this lower price trim. Let's say this lower trim takes Tesla's Cybertruck production up to 50,000 units for this year. And sure, you can argue whether that's too high or too low, but that would still only be a 40% utilization rate for the Cybertruck lines. And Tesla's utilization rate before this lower price trim works out to about 16%. So of course, those metrics are quite poor. However, if there's a silver lining, and I think there is, it's that Tesla's auto business is still profitable despite those atrocious per factory and per line metrics, which when you think about it is incredible and further highlights Tesla's cost control and efficiency. It really is as good as it gets, and it's not close. And it has Tesla positioned incredibly well to weather this storm and to bridge the gap until unsupervised ships in the US on the Cybertruck and supervised FSD ships across the EU, which should help to boost demand and output from Berlin. And when that happens, Tesla has incredible cost leverage to drive profitability once Tesla can improve those factory utilization rates, which I think they can do in time, even if it takes unsupervised to do so. The commercial commissioning has been announced of the Hagersville Battery Energy Storage Park, which is now the biggest operating energy storage facility in Canada. In terms of global numbers, it's not massive. It's only 1.2 gigawatt hours. We have seen bigger projects, but this landmark project represents a significant milestone in Ontario's energy transition. And this project was recognized as the Innovative Clean Energy Project of the Year. And you guessed it, the battery supplier will be Tesla, supplying 334 Megapack 2 XL units. Now, based on the pipeline, this may only be Canada's biggest operational battery until later this year, but the press that comes with this project using Megapacks and winning that award will certainly be a nice press cycle for Tesla Energy. Over the weekend, Josh West said he was trying to take a robotaxi to a concert in Austin, but for 2 hours straight, it said high service demand. Even Holmars is now saying, Tesla, it's time to get serious about robotaxi. If it's impossible to get a ride, it's not a serious service yet, it's just a pilot. Raise the prices or put more cars on the road until supply and demand are in balance. I've made my arguments for why I think Tesla is keeping the robotaxi pricing low. It's currently building its brand identity in this world. And Tesla always plays the long game, but that does not mean there won't be some pain along the way going that route. Circling back to BYD, its sales fell by their biggest amount in 5 years in February. February sales dropped 41% year over year, and that decline was driven by a 65% drop in domestic sales. The February data was the 6th straight month of sales declines for BYD. And if you smooth out for the Chinese holiday, looking at the first 2 months of the year, BYD's combined sales for January and February still fell 36% year over year. The word is, in the short term, BYD is expected to try to spark domestic turnaround with the release of new models and battery tech this month. But with this domestic sales slowdown for BYD, we know they're only going to double down on the export game. And Trump did say last month he would still love if Chinese companies build cars in America. I'm not saying it's likely, just something to keep in mind. Tesla is shipping a new software update, but its naming changes only. Navigate on Autopilot has been renamed to Navigate on Autosteer. FSD Computer is now referred to as AI Computer. The Autopilot tab is now called Self-Driving. And that phrase Autopilot Disengaged has been removed and replaced with self-driving disengaged. But again, these are purely terminology changes. The functionality is the same. So thank you, California, for this. But one could still make the argument that now things are even more confusing, as we now have Tesla using self-driving to describe ADAS features broadly. This video was shared of FSD 14.2.2.5 having no reaction to a plastic garbage can falling out of a trailer in front of the car. And sure, you could make the argument it shouldn't swerve into the oncoming lane without visibility, and if it swerved to the right, it would go off the road, but it didn't even break. And in this situation, no damage was done because it was plastic, but what do you think FSD should have done in that scenario? And I'm sharing this because I've always had a level of paranoia driving behind a trailer of any sort where you can have any sort of debris falling off like this. Waymo has confirmed its new Ojai vehicles are now out in the wild as of February this year. But remember, as we discussed, this vehicle is still expected to cost around $75,000 all in. It's $40,000 for the base vehicle, $10,000 for sensors, $14,000 for compute, and then $10,000 for the integration and shipping. And then late this year, Waymo is still touting the Hyundai Ioniq 5 vehicles coming for the fleet. But those vehicles, once you add in the Waymo driver, are expected to cost around $50,000 all in. So forget about Waymo being able to compete with Tesla's cost of goods sold for a second. The real question for Waymo is, can they become profitable at those price points? And that is still very much up for debate. For my Canadians, Tesla will miss the Vancouver Auto Show this year once again. The show said Tesla was invited to take part, and the team had several meaningful conversations throughout the planning window. But by the time Tesla was able to commit, all of the floor space was sold out. But I'm assuming it had something to do with what happened last year when Tesla had its display set up and then was asked to leave. That thanks to the protests tied to Elon. And the show said it was concerned about the safety of its guests. We're starting to get some Tesla sales data come in for February, and in France, Tesla sales are up 55%. They're up 74% in Spain, 32% in Norway, and 14% in Belgium. But per the usual, it's a mixed bag. They're down 45% in the Netherlands and 18% in Denmark, and down 7% in Italy. So an early sign of some potential stabilization for Tesla sales, but we'll take a closer look once the full ACEA data is released. And Tesla has now added an Edit Destination button on the main UI for the Robotaxi service. But it looks like when you touch that button, it says you can edit your drop-off point or change the destination of this trip via the mobile app. Tesla stock closed the day at $403.32, up 0.2%, while the NDX was up 0.13%. The volume was 10% below the average. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.